Today we want to talk a little bit about how the brain works. Most of us don't know how that occurs. And then throughout the presentation, talk a little bit about techniques and simple activities that we can do to keep us all focused, calm when we are in the middle of the storm, and then produce results and how to best relate to others. Let me talk a little bit about where I'm from. I live in Boston, and for many of you, you realize last year was one of the harshest winters that we encountered. We had a record-breaking 110 inches of snowfall in the area. This is a picture of my home in the height of last year's winter. And it also brings me back to an event that occurred during the winter last year, an early morning drive down one of the highways during a light snowstorm, trying to get to a client meeting on time. And the roads were a little bit slick, just enough so that I had both hands cautiously on the wheel and keeping my mind on what was going on around me. But at the same time, I was talking on the phone to someone in our office. I was doing what we all affectionately refer to as multitasking. We believe that that's productive. As I was talking on the phone, I was in the center lane, and a car came careening by me on the high-speed lane. Keep in mind, the roads were slick. It was early in the morning. There was a slight sheen of ice on the highway. They hadn't quite fully treated the streets yet. And this car came flying by me at an extremely high rate of speed, and as it went by me, I saw right next to me it start to careen. Back of the end of the car started to fishtail, and before I knew it, as it passed me, it ended up going into the gully to the left-hand side and smashed. It was just like out of a scene of a movie. And as I was on the phone, as this unfolded in front of me, I start yelling in my car, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And the person I'm on the phone with thinks that I'm the one that's involved in the accident, so she's on the other end of the phone going, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And it was really out of a high-speed chase film. This car, the pieces went flying everywhere. I'm shaking like a leaf. For some reason, as I slow down as quickly and as safely as I can, I look in my rearview mirror, and behind me I see a large 18-wheeler coming at me at a fairly rapid high speed. Quickly and amazingly enough, get over to the right-hand side, allowing that truck to pass. And as I'm shaking, I realize that as I'm talking on the phone, I perhaps missed keen details of what went on throughout that accident. In fact, the National Safety Administration estimates that 25% of all crashes are due to some type of distraction. And distraction.org reminds us that the perils of any behavior that takes us off the eyes can lead to an accident. We know that using cell phones, whether it's hand-free or hand-held, delays a driver's reaction as much as having a blood alcohol level of 0.08%. And studies suggest that cell phone use reduces the brain activity associated with driving by a whopping 37%. 1, 2, 4, boom. 5 seconds. It's the average amount of time your eyes are off the road while you're texting. When you're traveling at 55 miles an hour, that's enough time for you to cover the length of a football field blindfolded. The perils of distraction, they're everywhere. Let's take that over to our environment, our office setting. We create high-stress office environments even though a stressed brain is significantly less productive. Offices are not the only environment that creates sensory overload. Think about our kids' schools. Most are designed so that most real thinking has to occur at home. The fact is, most thinking environments are not designed to support what we consider healthy thinking. And most brain scientists rarely have conversation with business professionals or educational leaders on exactly how the brain works. Instead, we create work environments that are full of distractions. And in most of our business cultures today, we operate at full velocity and we're required to produce while juggling multiple roles. Sound familiar? We all think of it as the ability to switch one's attention between different objects or parts of a process, and many of us have been told this is a good thing. It makes us productive. We can get a lot of things done at the same time. And for most of multitasking, when we define it in that way, attention between different objects or part of a simple process, it actually can lead to productive results. But the reality is that most of us don't actually multitask. We are switch tasking. Switch tasking is when we take our focus and we focus between multiple things, different things. Productive, it's distracting, and it makes most of us feel stretched thin, and we've all been there. Things like working on a computer and being interrupted by a colleague. Or how about, we know it's easy to drive and chat with your passenger when you're familiar with the traveled route. But when you go to a brand new destination, how many of you have to close down the conversation or, like me, turn the radio down so I can think? That's switch tasking. That's when we're required to ask the brain to do two things at once. It's about focusing on multiple things, and more studies suggest that our brains are not capable of performing well when we are forced to switch task. And we're focused, and we have to do that all the time. It's also maybe referred to as dual task interference. That phrase was coined by David Rock. He's the author of a fantastic book called Your Brain at Work. He boils down the science of neuroscience, the study of the brain, to very simple layman's terms. Linda Stone at Microsoft calls it continual partial attention. Anytime you switch from one activity or thought process to another, there's a cost. Whenever you multitask, and more than one task requires any amount of attention, our accuracy goes down, and those errors cost organizations money. Incomplete tasks not only represent increase in errors and costs, it can have a huge impact on our project success. Delays in task completion adds up to delays in deliverables, and that ultimately affects our budgets. Constant emails and texting reduces our capability by an average of 10 points on an IQ test, according to the University of London, and it's equal to us missing a night's sleep. The need to always be on has a negative effect on our mental performance, and it tends to increase when we force our brain to do more. And the more we do in this space and the more we try to pretend that we can do well in it, the more we drain the brain. Here's some results of what the most common interruptions might look like, according to the Irvine Department of Information and Computer Science at the University of California. When you take a look at this list, it's pretty clear that most of us live and breathe this all the time. What they did is they asked how long and what does interrupt you on a regular basis. And the fact is that their study also determined that the longer a worker is distracted by one of these interruptions, the more likely are that we'll continue to be interrupted and ultimately not resume the task that we started, not even in the same day. Crisis, if you ask me. We experience distractions everywhere, at work, at home, and it's almost to the point of impacting our individual health. A recent study suggests that 43% of Americans categorize or label themselves as being disorganized. 20% of those respondents admit to having missed vital work deadlines, and nearly half say that disorganization has caused them to work late at least regularly 2 to 3 times a week. Here's the good news. We all have the capacity and ability to engage and enhance the same cognitive skills that can improve our productivity and reduce our stress. Before I introduce you to a few ways the brain works, I want to talk a little bit about the brain, and then let's focus on some tips and techniques to keep us more focused and be more productive. So let's take a look at the brain. I want to focus in one particular area, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain that sits directly behind your forehead. What they say, good things come in small packages. The prefrontal cortex is a measly 4 to 5% of your total brain volume. But without it, you wouldn't be able to set any type of goal. Thinking things like, oh, I have to stop and pick up that loaf of bread at the store at the end, that would be virtually impossible. And as project managers, we would be absolutely lost without our prefrontal cortex. We would never be able to plan.